I don't know.
Okay, this meeting of the Oyster River Cooperative School District for February 11th, 2015 will come to order. As you'll see, the order has changed from the traditional order, so the manifest will be at the end of the meeting to accommodate the Communications Committee meeting. And I've also gotten a request from Bob Barth. He's asked to speak, but he'd like to have 6 minutes to speak. And my ruling would be to allow him to do that, given the fact we have so few speakers. You can overrule that if you'd like, but otherwise allow him the 6 minutes. So is that acceptable? Okay. So our public comment?
Thanks for the courtesy of the extra time. As a retired diagnostic radiologist, also board certified in radiation therapy, I rise to raise concerns over health issues with respect to crumb rubber in artificial turf. I'm a strong supporter of field improvements, but cannot support an artificial field utilizing crumb rubber. Considering how long the issue has been under consideration, I'm concerned that the Sustainability Committee has not thus far been involved in the process. I thought the public approved the Sustainability Committee precisely to have input on this type of project. I'm concerned by advice not to quibble over scientific studies, but to visit the orbobcat.com website for the scientific evidence for the safety of artificial turf. School is a .org, not a .com, isn't it? Therefore, not to my surprise, under environmental impact are 5 sections all extolling the safety and virtues of artificial turf, and most specifically of tire crumb, as though it is a foregone conclusion it's our material of choice. There are 70 referenced articles, and the entire site is brought to us by the Synthetic Turf Council, the mouthpiece for the industry selling this stuff to us. It's like asking the tobacco industry in the 1970s if smoking causes lung cancer. Of course it doesn't. The website is a blatantly biased commercial, not a balanced source of information for the public. Numerous health experts and scientific papers raise deep concerns. Here is the definitive article referred by Kevin Gardner's letter, now on the website. Have any of you actually read it? Far from extolling the safety of tire crumb, its longest section calls for the necessity of further research. But why do we need further research if it's already proven safe? Because, as the article points out, many of the studies cited are, quote, limited in quality and number, and more are required. Some of the studies considered were admittedly generated by those with financial interest, i.e. the industry. One section speaks of the possibility of zinc contamination of 1 million cubic meters of water to the EP's maximum for the protection of aquatic life. There are 1.2 tons of zinc in the average crumb rubber soccer field. A final quote from the article, quote, the human health and environmental risk of artificial turf can be eliminated or reduced by substituting the tire rubber crumb with alternative infill materials containing less hazardous materials, unquote. How's that for a ringing endorsement for the safety of tire crumb? I'll leave the article with you as it has an information table on the alternatives to tire crumb. Oft referred to as showing the safety of tire crumb, this tome from the New York City Department of Public Health is similar and raises more safety questions than it answers. It lists over 100 chemicals of concern in tire crumb. I looked up about half of them, and 18 were listed as carcinogenic to humans, or probably so by the EPA. Even if all are individually all relatively at low levels, what is their cumulative effect over time? Carcinoma of the esophagus is almost always associated with smoking and drinking, not smoking or drinking. There's a definite synergy between the two. Most carcinogens have a long latent period between exposure and malignancy in terms of 5 to 30 years, not months. How could an admittedly unscientific survey of 38 soccer players with crumb rubber home fields who developed cancers, mostly lymphomas. 34 of them were goaltenders who frequently dive face first into the ground, creating a cloud of material immediately inhaled and ingested, probably taking in more volume and weight of toxic materials by a factor of 1,000 than players breathing 4 to 5 feet above ground where testing is usually performed. Nothing proven scientifically, but the expected ratio would be around 34 to 300, not 34 to 4. Astronomical odds against simple coincidence. I know of no scientific studies addressing the issue. So now we're considering using pulverized tires which contain several known carcinogens and up to 200 proprietary chemicals the industry will not even identify and we cannot possibly evaluate, all adding up to a low-level toxic waste site we want our students to play on. Sweden has recently banned further crumb rubber pitches, and the EPA no longer proclaims its safety. New York City and Los Angeles districts reject crumb rubber in artificial turf, illustrating use of the precautionary principle which states, when an activity raises threats of harm to human health or the environment, precautionary measures should be taken even if some cause and effect relationships are not fully established scientifically. In this context, the proponent of an activity rather than the public should bear the burden of proof. The process of applying the precautionary principle must be open, informed, and democratic and must include potentially affected parties. It must also involve an examination of the full range of alternatives, including no action. At this point, I would respectfully request the school board to at least, 1, consider alternatives and exclude tire crumb from consideration in the turf field. I will not vote for this measure if tire crumb remains an option, but will support it if tire crumb is excluded from consideration. 2, fully involve the Sustainability Committee in their advisory capacity. 3, remove all industry-generated sales pitch propaganda from any OR website. I would hope the board would feel a responsibility to present a balance of information to the public, not simply a sales pitch. Again, I fully support warrant Article 3 if tire crumb is excluded from consideration, respectfully. And again, I'm sorry this took so long.
Thank you, Rob. Is there further public comment?
Hi, Kim Clark-Durham. I'm also speaking in regards to the bond article for the track and fields. I also have a safety concern, which is the fact that right now we have students practicing on fields within the vicinity of each other where balls are flying all over the place. You have lacrosse players practicing across from baseball teams. And I'm extremely concerned about the safety of our students, which is why I'm supporting the initiative, and I will be voting yes on March 10th, and I'm encouraging others to do so as well. I think there are concerns in regards to the turf, and I'll let the scientists battle that one out. And I think that we can find different studies that will state different objectives. But I think in the end, this is a project that is 17 years in the making. A lot of money has been raised towards this project. The average cost for the average household will be about $4 a month, so the tax impact is not that high. And I believe the safety considerations for our students on a daily basis now during the fall and spring sports season is something that is equally important. So I will be voting yes, and I encourage others to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment? Seeing none. Could I have a motion to approve the January 21st, 2015 regular minutes? Okay.
I move to approve the minutes from the January 21st meeting.
Moved by Kenny. Is there a second? Seconded by Denise. Are there corrections?
I have a
Kenny?
couple. Most of them, I think, are just wording. In Roman numeral 3, approval of minutes and manifests, where it says Maria Barth, I probably would say Maria Barth moved to add that maybe say staff survey input was discussed, and Al Helen was asked by the board to write a draft.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Sure. I would word it, Maria Barth moved to add that staff survey input was discussed, and then just continue. And then the other change.
So do you have that one?
I'm sorry.
Okay, great.
The other change was when we were discussing the warrant articles. And when we were discussing warrant article 3, so initially when we approved it, it did not have, the school board recommends this appropriation was not in our initial vote. So that, I would strike that line out.
What?
Okay, so go to warrant article 3.
Do you know what
And
page are you on, Kenny?
It's page 7, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay. Thank you.
So Denise moves it, seconded by Al, and then after where we have the school board recommends this appropriation, I would take that out, because what we did is we approved the warrant article, and then after that we voted on whether or not we wanted the school board's recommendation to be there. Does that make sense?
Wasn't that like 5-2?
Right, so and that's in the second paragraph. So the second,
Oh,
what starts
I
with me is
see.
correct.
Oh, there it is. I got
Right,
it.
right. So I would just take out that one.
School board, so you just want to take out the school board recommends this appropriation in the
Exactly.
first part? Okay.
Right.
You see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we clear with those two? Are there any corrections? Okay. So if we vote to approve the regular minutes of January 21st with those changes, all those in favor, please raise your hand. 6 in favor, the student rep in favor. Could I have a motion to approve the non-public minutes for January 21st? Denise?
I move to accept the non-public minutes for January 21st.
Moved by Denise, seconded by Kenny. Are there corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. 6 in favor, student rep in favor. Okay, announcements, accommodations from the district.
Todd Allen from the high school. I wanted to start out, I'll pass these out. The Mouth of the River, one for every board member. Mouth of the River, our student newspaper, just published at the first of the month their latest edition. And I just want to commend advisor and teacher Sean Kelly, who's been our journalism teacher now for 4 years. This is, they've done some great work in the past, but this one really is an exceptional edition, packed full of just really very informative, thought-provoking, and well-written pieces. So I encourage everybody to take a look at it. For those of you at home, if you want to check, there's also a website, mornewspaper.com, which is the online version of it, and there's even more articles there. But I can't tell you how impressed I am, and many of our community are, with the caliber of work that our kids have done here. It's great stuff. Speaking of great work, I did want to take a minute just to thank, I don't know if you noticed, but it's been snowing a lot lately. I came over here after the last snowstorm, or the one that we had 2 days off, and the snowdrifts were, if you can imagine a courtyard over by the cafeteria, the snowdrifts were above the window, so you couldn't even see out of the windows heading out of the cafeteria. It was like 6, 8 feet high. I came over here and we had an army of our custodial staff out there shoveling, plowing, and so forth. And for me, I was able to go home and say, hey, good luck, guys. And I came back the next day, and every door was cleared, every path was available, and it was just remarkable. So Jim Rozicki and all his facilities and custodial staff have been doing an unbelievable job over these storms, and hopefully they won't have to do it again this weekend. And I would just like to also, one kind of side comment, just for Dr. Barth, I completely would be very supportive of looking at alternatives to crumb rubber as part of our approach in this project. So I think it's a very worthwhile suggestion.
So it's no longer a newspaper, it's a magazine.
Well, it's a news magazine.
Dennis Harrington, Moharamet. Ditto for Jim Rozicki. That same crew was on the roof of Moharamet most of the day today. I don't know how they get it done, but they do. And we all, the staff and particularly me, really appreciate the work that the maintenance crew has done over the last few miserable days. I would also like to recognize the Moharamet PTO for the Winter Carnival. Somehow we managed to get it in between the storms, and there were hundreds of people there enjoying the time. If I had had the time to plan it, I would have contacted the university and brought some kids in to do snow sculpture, but I didn't have time to plan it. I was home watching TV and reading, both good activities.
Good evening, everyone. Carrie Vaish from Mastway. I wanted to just bring you all up to speed. We actually we expanded upon our kindness theme over at Mastway over the past couple of weeks. It was planned for a week. We needed to extend it with the lack of school days. So we really started kicking off with a whole school assembly, which is really special at Mastway. We love having the kids together all as a whole, celebrating and really tapping into our enrichment committee that puts on a lot of great things for the kids. We actually took part in the Kindness Challenge, which was a challenge that was put across the whole country to encourage kids just to remember those please, thank yous, looking people in the eye when you talk, and that sort of thing. We had all sorts of celebrations throughout the school day, each day, and the kids did a great job. We also entered a contest to try to beat a Guinness Book of World Records, and a number of handprints that we could collect among the schools, so we're anxiously awaiting the information about that. This Thursday night, we have our PTO meeting. Todd Allen will be there to present about the field project. And so I welcome all of you to join us, Mastway, 7 o'clock. And in addition, next week, I can't believe we're at this time of the year already, but Read Across America is a great celebration for Mastway. And this year will be no different. We'll start this Friday with our kickoff celebration of the whole school presentation. I know we have some exciting things planned. The Cat in the Hat always makes a show. I know many of you have already signed up and offered to come read to our students, and it really is an exciting thing for them to have someone else, different face, different voice, come talk about what you do and read a story to our children. So if you didn't get to sign up and if you'd like to, please let us know. Either reach out to myself or Adele Pulitzer in the library. We'd love to have you, and it's going to be a fun time. Thank you.
Thank you. We have announcements and commendations from the board. Kenny?
I have a few things. One, I just wanted to recognize, I think, an unsung hero that all of us who serve on the board, and I'm sure all the administration know, Wendy DeFrucio. And I just felt that at the deliberative session of how well prepared everything was, and just every meeting, everything is always queued up, and people don't see Wendy, but she's really the guts behind this organization. So, then a few other comments. As we put forward our budget at deliberative session, and even as I read my piece, which spoke about the tax impact for the different communities, the budget is very, very complicated, and we get our state allocation for what is considered the adequate education. We have the formulas that kind of divide how much communities pay, the 50-50 kind of split depending on assessment and students. But I think many people don't know why, let's say, Lee had a bigger number than ours. In Durham, there's the TIF that's being discussed. Plus in Durham, there's so much property that's coming online that's going to add to Durham's assessment, which therefore will affect that whole formula. And I was wondering at some lull point if we can get a presentation on kind of how those factors come into the budget. So everyone, community as well as us, develop a greater understanding. A third thing, I live on Baghdad Road up near the turnoff to the middle school. And it's impossible for me to get to my house when the middle school is letting out. The cars are lined up, they're on Madbury Road, and I know we have a no idle policy, but I couldn't expect anyone to shut their car off with this weather. But my thought is, why are so many parents feeling compelled to pick their students up at school? And is this something we should look at and see if we can address? I think environmentally it would be much better if we didn't have all these cars sitting there. It means kids aren't on the bus, and the bus has to go anyway. And if somehow we could improve our public transportation, and those are the people that are not choosing to use it, so I just thought that might be good. And on our lighter note, in touching on the snow, we've had all these delayed starts. And we do have a group of parents who are trying to get a later start to our school day, but I don't think they're responsible for all this. Don't blame them.
No conspiracy theories. Other announcements, accommodations? Okay. I'm sorry.
I would like to do this in conjunction with my school board committee update on the wellness committee, and really have a shout out for all the people, the nurses, the guidance counselors, the physical education teachers that are involved with our mental health curriculum. At the last meeting, which was last week, Professor Joan Glutting from UNH brought 2 of her senior students over. They're doing an independent study on mental health education, and they're in the exploratory stage, searching for school districts that are doing this. And according to Dr. Glutting, Oyster River is just miles ahead of any school in America or Canada in doing the right thing for our students when it comes to mental health. So I thought that's great.
Great, thank you. Other announcements and accommodations? District reports. I assume that Assistant Superintendent. Superintendent's report?
Just a real quick one. You're reading a lot in the paper about roof loads, and, these current storms have certainly piled the snow on our roofs. And, Dennis alluded to it in his presentation. I just want to let the board know that Jim Rozicki and his maintenance team have a snow removal plan in terms of the roofs, and so we are addressing that. And, it's just an FYI that he, again, is very proactive, and his team is very proactive in taking care of these issues.
Okay, thank you. Business Administrator, we have the budget update.
You have in your packet the latest update on the current year budget. I just want to point out one thing. I noticed after we printed it, there's a strange line in there underneath the total salaries. Just ignore that. I'm not sure what that means. But everything's pretty much where it was last year. There have actually, since we ran this, there have been some adjustments, so I'll come back to you next month with another update. But what I usually do is look at from year to year to see where we stand, and it's pretty typical. Questions?
Let's just add before you ask us two questions. Sue is giving you kind of a comprehensive review of where our current budget is to date. What she didn't add that I will add is that we're tight. We're not in a place where we have a lot of latitude. We're running a very tight budget at this point.
Well, just in terms of salaries, and notice that there's a lot of overspending, particularly in the para subs, and just kind of, just wondering how, and I guess in some of them, kind of if you can explain a little bit maybe why that is.
Well, in terms of the para subs, that's a result of student needs. So those change. They change daily. So when I said there were some updates, I do know that we have a couple of students that have moved out, and we will be not needing some of those paras. So that's going to be adjusted. But beginning of the year, we knew that we needed 4 additional over what we budgeted. So that's a reflection of that.
And I also would add to Sue's answer on that is their unpredictable nature of your sub-use in any given year. And when we do the sublines, we base it on historical data. And so in a given year, you might see it bounce above historical data or in another year below. So right now, it happens to be above. And it could be a host of reasons in addition to the issue around student needs.
And I will tell you, too, in terms of the subline, some of our teachers, when they get to the maximum, then they go on to our disability program. So their salaries are currently encumbered to the full extent. So when that happens, those will change. So like I said, that'll be another adjustment, because we do have some of those situations right now, too.
Okay.
So does that explain that 86,000 in para salaries?
In salaries, those are the additional that we needed this year for student needs, yes.
Okay. I just had one other question. Are we on track for an unexpended balance of $350,000?
So far, yes, because one of the other adjustments we need to make is, you can see there's some overages in the district account, and one of the adjustments we need to make is last year's encumbered amounts. We haven't added those back in, so that will greatly increase that balance. So we expended those funds, but we haven't added the encumbered amounts to that from the prior year, and one of those was the Mohammed project that we finished up in the summer, so that's going to change those numbers.
Yeah.
And in terms of facilities, Jim Rozicki is very good with his capital projects and holding off on what he can until we get to a point where we know we're going to get through the winter, we're going to get through all of the maybe emergencies. So he has a few projects that are kind of on hold. So he's got a hefty balance there. The roofs, that's one that we're just thinking we may have to actually contract out for some of that, because they are some pretty hefty inches of snow up there. Other questions?
Thank you.
I'll bring you another one in a month or so. Thanks.
Thank you.
Student Senate report?
Yeah, the Senate hasn't been working on anything major at this point in the year, but we have started to look ahead to next year and brainstorming what we can do differently for next Spirit Week and what we can add or change to make it a more effective event. And the prom committee has also been working on prom for May 14th, and that's going really well, so we're excited.
Great. Very much. Okay. So we have the revised elementary strategic plan, and I believe there are 4 components of that, is that right? Okay, so I don't know if you want to say something about the process that went
I
through.
do.
Okay.
Okay. So if I could introduce this, I'm going to invite Dennis and Carrie to the podium as well. So tonight was going to be the grand unveiling with our teaching staff present to go through this with you. And as you can see, there are no teachers present. That isn't because we didn't do the work, it's because the snow and the delayed starts have totally interfered with our timetable. I literally met with the Massway staff on the revised plans after about 6 weeks of working with the Elementary Strategic Planning Steering Committee. We brought it to Massway. Great conversation with Massway, ready to move on to Mohermet, which was going to be the very next week. After the last 2 weeks, Dennis and I's running joke is, if we want to have a snow day or a delayed start, schedule the superintendent to come to Mohermet. Because literally every single time we scheduled Mohermet, it was a snow day or a late start, and we never got to the conversation. We had that conversation this morning. So my commitment to the elementary staff was that I would present the revised goals that you have in your packet to both schools. We would collect their input, and then we would bring it to the Elementary Strategic Planning Committee, who then would make adjustments accordingly, and then we would present it to you. We had tons of time to have that work done, and it would have been tonight. So rather than present this as a fait accompli, I will tell you that the conversations with both staffs were outstanding. They really appreciated the adjustments, which, you know, we can go through in just a few minutes. But I really feel like I owe the Elementary Strategic Planning Committee one more bite at this before, you know, it's final. But it will be final when we hit again in March. So all integrity and all due process has occurred. It's just we need now to kind of put the, you know, final stamp of approval on it with by incorporating the 2 staff's comments. I will tell you globally, the comments have been very positive. Going specifically to the goals, we took the STEM goal out of the equation completely because we know that next generation science is going to occur in the upcoming school year, and so what we see happening with science is it would ultimately replace the math goal that we're working on this year. The full-day kindergarten goal, we will be ready for presentation in March. We've got that work done. We have a draft PowerPoint. We could have presented that more thoroughly tonight than we can, you know, this, but so that work is done. The math committee is within a month of making its decision recommendation related to math, so that work is being done. So that left personalized learning and social-emotional goal. The personalized learning, the feedback from our elementary staff is they didn't want to deal with computers, they wanted to have conversations. Personalized learning for our staff is central to the mission statement. So they want to have a conversation. The Elementary Strategic Committee wanted them to have a conversation about what that means to them as a professional and have that conversation together, both staffs, and then share what they actually do that personalizes learning and create a resource that's generated teacher to teacher so that if they hear something that's going good at one grade, they might pick it up and use it in their own grade. So basically cross-pollinating best ideas. So that's how that goal developed. And then the last one was the social-emotional goal. And what we wanted to do there is have a common conversation again, away from computers and technology, having people sit down in the same room, because that was really the message we were getting from both the elementary staffs, and talk about what it is, and then agree to guiding principles. And then each building would then take those guiding principles and develop a program that makes sense to it. So it's not like the math program where you're going to have one math program. What you'll have is common guiding principles, but Massway may develop a program that's different than Mohermet. So in essence, that's the work we did. We significantly changed deliverables and in terms of dates. And I think the Elementary Strategic Planning Committee has been outstanding to work with. I think the product that they produced is far more focused and clean than, you know, what we saw initially. So these are actually adopted goals by the board, and my commitment to you ultimately was that you would see the revised product. So I would say you're seeing the revised product that's probably 95% right, but I wanted to give the Elementary Strategic Planning Committee one last bite at it before I could say this is the official recommendation from the elementary staff. Dennis and Carrie, anything that you want to add in relation to that?
Summed it up quite well.
Can we save the coffee and conversation until the spring?
We had a great coffee and conversation in Mohammed this morning, so that's another part of the benefit of doing this work, is getting back out and talking to the elementary teachers. So, for Tom, whatever you want to do in terms of tonight, if you want to talk about it tonight, or you want to talk about it at the next meeting when the teachers are present, it's totally up to you.
My inclination would be to postpone it till the teachers, if
Great.
that's agreeable to people.
And the Elementary Strategic Committee is willing to be part of the presentation, so I think that's great.
I think that would be better. So thank you for your work.
I just had one question. I'm just thinking, I mean, I know this is to be continued and temporary, but two of these actually overlap with board goals, which were the full-day kindergarten, and then mixed in is the math thing, which you guys are a part of, but we actually were going to have a review of K through 12 math. And I know, the time kind of gets away from us, but in there, sometime in the spring, there needs to be some kind of an organized report where we can hear about what's, in the full day K, it's like coming up with a report, but we need to actually hear one. And then the math, it may have to be something that's integrated, elementary, middle, and the high school, but, your guys' program, that just kind of what has happened. And so that we're kind of on board, and I think also, especially the math one and the kindergarten are ones the public really want to know about.
So, Ally, I think you'd be pleased to know that, Tom and I had the deliverables on when those presentations would occur over the next several months, so we're on target for that.
We'll be able to give you a detailed roadmap of where we started, all of the action that has taken place over the course of the school year, and hopefully, definitely, a decision on what math materials are going to be used in the two schools over the next 5 to 6 years, and also begin to project the professional development that needs to take place in order for whatever program is chosen to roll out effectively for teachers, with teacher involvement in the designing of the program.
Great. Kenny?
I just wanted to say at this point, realizing the final product will be coming soon, is just want to thank everyone involved. I think the concerns that were addressed by the school board on this issue, concerning both the product and the process, I think I'm very pleased on the effort that's been put forward, and it sounds like it's gone very well, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay. Other? Okay. Maria? Yeah.
Just, if you have nothing better to do than to keep track of what the discussions in Concord, which involves full-day kindergarten, should they mandate it or shouldn't they? And, of course, it gets back to, will the state fund it or not? And I'm always suspicious when they fund new programs, especially if they mandate it, that 2 years down the line, oops, we don't have the money, you get to fund it. So that will obviously affect if they come through with the mandate for full-day kindergarten. This is all being discussed.
Keep our eyes open for that.
Where is that now in the process? Is that a House initiative or Senate
It's
initiative?
a committee that's, it's under discussion in the House.
It's in the House?
Yep.
Okay, so we have information on the request for proposals for the athletic field proposal. Let's speak to that.
Again, just in terms of process, this isn't anything that I would normally put in front of the school board, RFPs or something that Sue and I do sort of, all the time. My issue with this particular RFP is we wanted to get it together in a fashion so that, assuming we get a positive vote by the voters, that we could then, meet the timeline that Mr. Allen has just shared with us over and over again, that we would like to have this project done by October. So that was one issue. So we wanted to jump on the RFP. And then, I couldn't say more praise for the deliberative session. I think our deliberative session was an amazing process. We had incredible intellectual firepower there, from Dr. Gardner to Dr. Barth. We had a great conversation around the whole issue. And it really, and Todd and I have had discussions since. And, the issue for us is we have a commitment to sustainability that makes us, relatively unique. We adopted the policy about 2.5 years ago. And, you heard Todd allude to it and Dr. Barth allude to it. And I would really like to put the policy together, the RFP together, that seeks alternatives. Even though the science is shaky one way or the other, I think, the commitment of this community to sustainability is very deep. And quite frankly, we really need to keep the big tent theory that we started 2.5 years together and keep everybody focused on the end game. And in this particular case, the end game is the track, the all-weather turf field, and the rearranged athletic fields. So I'm seeking a conversation and feedback from the full board, whether that pathway is the pathway that you all support. It's certainly a pathway that Todd and I support, and would like to have that discussion with the board and make sure that we are heading down the same path.
Yeah.
I have had great problems with this situation. I've had a person question my principles over this, and sometimes principles or values clash. And I will admit it right up front, I'm a tree hugger. I am extremely worried about the environment as we're going, and we can read studies forever, but my concern is the bit by bit pollution of our environment and the interaction that this brings. And I didn't vote to recommend this. I was very hesitant. Should we not? Thinking that there were two options: buying lots of land and making lots of fields, or having this rubberized rubber crumb field. I reached out to relatives in Sweden who are engineers in the environmental field, and was told that they have now banned or will not issue any more permits for these types of fields, be it for health reasons. I think it was more for environmental reasons than for health reasons. So now I've come to a conclusion, and I'll tell you what my principles are and what my values are. There are, having done lots of reading, there are alternatives. And I will gladly support this warrant article. I will donate to it. I will advocate for it. I will push it and scream from the mountaintops if rubber tire crumbs are taken off the table, not as an option, but just taken off the. That's not acceptable to me to keep polluting And I've heard, well, we take runoff of nitrogen and pesticides. Well, maybe we need to look at our integrated field management. If we put nitrogen on the field and it runs off, then we put too much, because otherwise the plants would have used it. So, as a joke, I like the cork crumb, and we can all start drinking wine and save our corks and have a wonderful field. But cork is one option. There is one option of having cork as a layer on top of the tire crumbs to keep the dust and particles down, but of course that doesn't mitigate all the sink runoff. But that's where I stand. I'm for this, as long as it's not tire crumb. And people say, well, you're the fiscal conservative, the cheap person. And that holds true. Buying something that come back to bite you is not a good use of money. So it isn't always just the cheapest, but we want the best value for our money. And if it's more expensive than we thought it was going to be, I've read like 200,000. We need 200 people in the area to give $1,000 each, and that shouldn't be that hard.
Denise?
I'm certainly in favor of looking at alternatives, but I'm not sure that we can take it off the table completely in terms of, I mean, we have a warrant with a set amount of dollars, and I don't want to get into a situation sort of what we did with the Mohammed expansion, where all of a sudden it was a lot more, and we're, you know, how are we going to make it work? And fortunately, we were able to find a solution to that, but I'm not sure, I just don't want to see us get in that situation. I'm certainly in favor of, suggesting in the RFP, put forward a proposal that uses an alternative if we can have it done in the amount of money, staying within our budget. I think it's certainly worth looking at that, absolutely. But I would not be in favor of completely excluding the crumb rubber, because, again, financially we'll have a set amount of money, and also because I'm not sure if alternatives haven't really been studied. I mean, how do we know for sure? I mean, we don't know. They could be safer, maybe not. You never know. I mean, I guess you're never sure, but I certainly could be in favor of looking at, putting it out there and saying, request for proposals, anyone who would like to submit a proposal that uses an alternate or partially or however, I would think we could look at that.
Could I ask you, in terms of the our request for proposals, is it just one product that you're going to be asked for, or are there multiple options that somebody could propose? Could you just say something?
Sure. I mean, in concept, what we would chase after is alternatives to crumb rubber as the base for this field. That would be the goal, if that's where the board is at. I certainly understand what Denise's position is, and I guess, this is the issue of, philosophy that the board has lived under. You pass the sustainability policy within weeks by coming, and, this is in incongruence with the overall board direction of a sustainable alternative. And, you're absolutely right. The research is out on alternatives. But the research is questionable on, and I say questionable meaning that people have different opinions of the research. And on crumb rubber, it seems to me that, this is the district that would look at an alternative to it just because there's some question around it.
Al?
I agree with Denise. I think that you keep all your options open, because what'll happen, ideally, is the best option will come to the surface. If there is something that is a substantially better, environmentally friendly, it lasts as long and all that, it'll rise to the surface. So, I mean, I think that by keeping all the options open and saying we're looking for the best, safest product, again, that if that's your criteria, then if there's something better than chrome rubber, then it'll obviously be, we'll see it. So I think you should keep all your options open.
I just have a question for Todd. Is the UNH field chrome rubber?
Yes.
Okay. And I just, would you know, the Boston College field, would that be chrome rubber?
I cannot speak to Boston College fields. I know that there's actually multiple fields over at UNH, and I haven't actually been over to assess all of them, but certainly the two that we most commonly use are chrome rubber.
And I can't, I just got an email notice at Oberlin College, which is about as scrupulous in environmental safety as any place I could imagine, just put in an artificial turf field for the same reasons that we're considering. So it just seems to be kind of inconceivable that all these places are putting these fields in oblivious to this danger, that they haven't studied it and haven't considered that these fields are safe. I just can't imagine Oberlin would put in a field and not, a field of this type and not. So I'd be interested to find out if they put in I can find that out. But
and certainly, more close to home, UNH was confronted with, I know when they had to replace one of their fields, they were confronted with many of the same questions, and they did investigate it significantly. And since that time, they have installed multiple other fields. So it's certainly, Marty Scarano and the UNH programs are certainly experts on kind of navigating that as well.
And these fields are in proximity to College Brook, and there's no evidence that I know of that there's been an environmental impact on College Brook. Is that?
I can't speak as an expert to that. I certainly, I have not heard that.
Okay. Kenny?
I could see looking for alternatives, and I think anytime anyone does anything, you shouldn't get locked into a course of action, and you should always look to see if there are better alternatives. But I wouldn't close the door, and I'll give my reasons. I've heard of using Nike ground-up sneakers as an alternative fill. I think Nike sneakers are incredibly toxic, and they don't have a record of being used in fields for years after years after years. We heard tonight about using cork. The wine industry is moving away from cork because there's a shortage of cork, and I don't think we're going to be able to accumulate cork through recycling that's going to be used. So I would love if there's a great alternative. I don't know if there is. I also did extensive reading, and I find that the problem is you can't prove that something's safe. You could only prove that something causes harm. And it takes a lot of work to even put, you put the studies together, it takes time, and then you find the link, but to prove something's safe, that doesn't happen. Artificial turf fields, the initial one was the Astrodome, which was in the 1960s. This isn't a new product, and we hear about time and how the cancers come after time. We live in an incredible litigious society, and my belief is for how long these fields have been in existence, if there was a true link, then we would be seeing that this was in our courts at this time. And I'm not saying that guarantees these fields are safe, and I'm not saying there's not a better alternative, but I don't think we should discard this possibility, because I think that what we have now is not sustainable for many, many reasons. It's not sustainable to our athletes, it's not sustainable to our environment, it's not sustainable to our programming, it's not sustainable to our community. And having a field with artificial turf opens many, many doors. I also feel that if we're talking about runoff into water, we need to do that better with our fields. I agree completely. We should do it regardless. We've done it with our rain garden in front of the school. I think any project we put forward, we need to be very careful. So I'm all for exploring alternatives. I wouldn't take our initial option off the table, though, and I think we need to weigh them all together and make that decision.
Sarah?
I am also for exploring alternatives, but I have to admit, the thing that freaks me out the most about this is what happened with the Mohammed cafeteria. And I am very uncomfortable with the idea that I feel that it was put forth to the community as an acceptable option, and 2 weeks later, it needed 10 more feet on it and $60,000 to make it an acceptable option. And that is my concern about this. Because I do not want to be put in a situation where I'm being asked to go into surplus funds after the taxpayers told us that this was the amount of money that we could spend. Now, could we have a situation where we find an option and donations could cover that difference? Could I be okay with that? Sure, I could be okay with that. But I could not be okay with telling the taxpayers, this is how much the school district is going to pay for this, and then going back and making it a board decision to then spend more on it, because it's no longer an acceptable project.
Yeah.
So that's where I stand. I'm all for options. I'm all for looking at everything. I'm all for thinking about, okay, can we cover this with fundraising? But I'm not comfortable with it the other way.
I agree with that. I think that would be very dishonest if we came in with a project and got approval and spent a considerable amount of money that was not approved. I agree.
So would
I think I have the feedback I need.
You okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we have a motion to approve the Oyster River High School overnight field trip, a little bit easier decision maybe.
Well, I did have some.
Just noticed on the agenda, it's wrong. It says the trip is from March 3rd to the 8th. It's actually only from the 6th to the 8th. The actual request says that, but the agenda's wrong.
Okay. Kenny?
I move to approve the Oyster River High School overnight field trip. It's a robotics program, March 6th through March 8th.
Okay. Moved by Kenny, seconded by Denise. Discussion?
Not discussion about this because I'm in favor of it, but in the approval are people's personal phone numbers, and I'm feeling maybe that's not what what should be done with these presentations. Am I wrong with that?
I'm surprised they're in there.
Yeah, I would say that was an oversight on our part, Ken.
Okay, so just maybe I shouldn't have called attention, but
Don't call those people.
these numbers have been scrambled. But-
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we have, I'm sorry, did we get a second to his motion?
Yes, I
Okay,
seconded
second. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. 6 in favor, student rep in favor. Okay, school board updates? Yeah, Al?
Well, we just, it was slipping my mind, but it was right before this, we had a communications meeting, and we had a couple of members of the public came in as well who were working on trying to help support the athletic field upgrade. And I think the big thing we were trying to do is, from our side, is ensure that the information that's going out, because there's a lot of contradictory information now that's starting to flow around, trying to get accurate information about what the project is and get it out to as many people as possible to raise the awareness so that this issue really gets a fair treatment.
And what is the project?
The athletics field project that we just talked about?
Yes. And the information is on Chrome Rubber, or is the information on the project with?
It could be, yeah. I mean, again, there's been Chrome Rubber would be one of it. For example, at the deliberative session, you had Chrome Rubber came up, and then you had an organic chemist come up and talk about actually Chrome Rubber being around for 100 years in tires used as filler. So, and then you also had information that was submitted to the school board about black tubules, which are not used in tires at all. So that's an example that there's a lot of what I would call not accurate science that's being placed out there, and so it makes it very difficult for people who are trying to figure out what to do on the project to come up with a good decision. So yes, that would be part of it.
And the other part is?
How much it costs, why, I kind of broke it down to myself into 3 parts. Why do we need this project? Why are we using an artificial turf field as opposed to grass? And what are there environmental or health problems that are posed by using an artificial field? So for me, those 3 things I think would be kind of boil down to the project. So.
Which answers my question that you haven't said a word about alternatives. You have said there are 3 parts to this, crumb rubber, cost, then why are we having it? So I go back to my statement before. I cannot support this. I will not vote for it.
Kenny?
I think in fairness, we had a process where many discussions at the board table happened, and the board voted to approve the project. We went to deliberative session, and it was almost unanimously approved. The board has indicated today that we're willing to see alternatives used for the fill, but the project, as initially proposed, has been passed by the board and has been passed overwhelmingly by voters at deliberative. So that's where we stand now, and it would be wonderful if we could come up with an alternative filler that we could all stand behind and be proud of and want and think it's a better fit. But right now, where we're at, this is the project we have that's been approved. So I think we need to remember that.
Okay, I think this is just an update. I don't want to get into a discussion.
I wasn't going to get into a long discussion because it's just a committee thing. But anyway, to answer your question, I would say that under my 3rd thing about the health and that would be kind of where alternatives would come out. And from our perspective, if we're going to talk about exploring alternatives, then the obvious question are, what are the alternatives? So that's the kind of information that we're trying to get out to as many voters to try to help them make an informed decision.
Maybe I would add that the board's pretty clear tonight that they want to look at alternatives, so that should be part of the information that goes out.
Definitely.
Fair enough. Other school board updates? Public comment?
Could I take 5 seconds?
Sure.
Which are not owed me?
Well, can you wait till public comments?
No, I think
It is public comment.
This is public comment?
Yeah.
I just tonight watched a 1-hour presentation that was back in December, put on by, I'm not sure who, the high school, I gather, discussing the artificial field. Crumb rubber was never mentioned prior to the deliberative session, so far as I know. Actually, it wasn't even mentioned at the deliberative session until we brought it up. I think that's what concerns me about the process, is that the options were never presented to the public, that there were options, or even what was being considered. And what is obviously being considered, I assume that the estimate for the warrant came from what is a crumb rubber field historical proposal, not the possibility of cork or something else. It was a stacked deck all along. The composition of the field was, so far as I know, and I admit I came in late on this, it was never, ever mentioned that there were alternatives, what were the alternatives, until the deliberative session. And even there, it wasn't specifically mentioned until I brought it up.
Further public comment? Okay, closing actions. We have a manifest. Is there a manifest review next week also? Okay.
There's a manifest review next week, but not a board meeting?
Not a board meeting, just because there's so much time between board meetings.
Okay.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that maybe, or I should have been, I'm not sure I can make that. I'm wondering if someone else might be available.
Okay, I'll try.
Well, wait a second, is it at 6:30 though?
We could probably do it earlier.
We could change the time.
Okay, is there a time that day?
Could we maybe make it for 6 o'clock? Or does that work
6
for
o'clock,
folks?
What night of the week are we talking?
It's a Wednesday, it is a Wednesday night.
I don't have my calendar in front of me.
Okay,
I'm flexible.
I could do 6.
Because I have something else at 7, but if we could do 6, that would be,
if we,
or, well, you
I
can
know
do
I have
that.
something at 6, but it's in Durham, so I can probably drop kids off and get to it. It takes a community to raise your children, I tell you.
Would 5:30 be better for you?
Probably not, no.
Okay. Well, what about even 6:15? Because it usually typically only takes that 20 minutes, half an
6:15,
hour.
would that work for you, Sarah?
Sure, let's put it down, make it
Okay,
happen.
6:15.
6:15? Okay.
Okay. And then we have a regular meeting on the 4th of March.
Okay.
I want to raise a question. According to board policy, the board is supposed to do a self-evaluation at some point, which I don't think we've really done previously. So whether we should take some time to do that at some point, to look at what we could do better, because it is part of the policy that we do an annual self-evaluation, which I don't think we've done before.
There's probably models that the School Boards Association has.
Yeah, and there's stuff in the guide, so maybe just a fair warning that I think that might be coming, and if we have to do some preparation for that, we'll get word out.
I just have a question for us, since I don't want to let Ed off the hook of the deep self-evaluation, and that would be his last meeting. So are you thinking? Are you thinking that we would do it? The 1st of March or?
Yeah, we want to get every last drop of blood out of that guy.
So you're going to nominate Al to write it?
I just think since it is policy, we should do it, and it's probably could be a good thing to talk about what we've done well, what we need to improve on. So that.
I think in the past, we've looked at our goals and kind of checked off here.
Yeah. I think
So
that might be part of it, but it seems to me that it's a little bit bigger issue than that. So.
Yeah.
Okay. So could I have a motion to go into non-public session? Okay.
I move to go into non-public session based on RSA 91-A3, Roman numeral 2A, for the purpose of superintendent evaluation.
Moved by Kenny, seconded by Al. Needs a roll call vote.
Denise Day, aye.
Sarah Farwell, aye.
Kenny Rotner, yes.
Al Holland, aye.
Tom Newkirk, yes.
Maria Barth, yes.
Okay.